Hey everybody, Edo here, and for this week's video, I want to talk about ideas and execution, or ideas versus execution. And if this comes off a little ranty, I apologize, but more and more I continue to hear the refrain, ideas are a dime a dozen. It's all about execution. Don't worry about how special your idea is. Share it on the internet. And, I have to confess, for a very long time, I also felt that ideas were a dime a dozen. But I will tell you, they are not. Bad ideas are a dime a dozen. Maybe they're a penny a dozen. Good ideas, perhaps, are a dime a dozen. Good ideas that look like great ideas, perhaps. But great ideas, really bona fide great ideas, are not a dime a dozen. And I think there's also on the execution side, and not everyone is familiar with me, but if I'm really good at anything, I am great at execution, right? I'm great at taking an idea and following all the steps and delivering it. Like the whole pipeline and process of making something and being committed to, I'm really good at that. So I'm definitely an execution guy. And so for people who are execution people who are really good at the process, in some ways, you take an idea and you grow it and you change it and you cultivate it over time and improve it. At the same time, there is no shortage of great ideas that are ruined by poor execution. Ruined by poor execution, right? And so, the purpose here is just to talk about this a little bit because I want people to appreciate both halves of it and think about it critically. This was coming up in a number of Facebook groups, but even in Jamey Stegmaier's 10 steps to designing a game, he sort of talks about the execution half and how, there's tons of ideas a dime a dozen. I don't know if he used that actual phrase or not. But part of that is around, you should be comfortable sharing your ideas. You don't need to copyright them, put them on the internet. And I think I'm not really talking about that, right? This isn't about hide your idea from other people, because I actually do believe if you have a good idea and a great idea, sharing it and discussing it can help you deliver a fantastic execution and fantastic results. I do think that's there, and I do think in the board game space there's a limited opportunity for people to steal your ideas, right? But, when it comes to ideas, right, so this sort of ideas that I'm dozen, yeah, there are plenty of ideas that are good ideas that are execution for board games. Like, yeah, that'd be a good board game. But I'd like to highlight great ideas. And I think a great board game idea resonates more than just the mechanic or the design or the play, right? So to think about some examples of this that stand out to me. And look, I bring up Thunderworks games all the time. I like Keith. I look at all his stuff. But one of the things that comes to mind when you think of a game like Role Player or Cartographers is that when you say, hey, here we're going to make a game where you get the opportunity to make your own fantasy map. That idea is fantastic, right? It is fantastic. And then from that, how do you do it? How are you going to build it? What are the mechanics? But the starting point has a lot of value. Another idea would say, for example, again on Role Player, but I'll give plenty of other ones. But even with Role Player, we're going to make a game where the game is about making the character that you go on a D&D adventure with. We are going to take this piece of nostalgia, focus in on it in a way that is novel, and there's just a lot of life to that idea. In terms of tattoo stories, I just recently interviewed Eric Slauson. Here's a game where people are going to get to draw their own tattoos, right? Like I'm just trying to emphasize there's these ideas that you can be like, oh, that's going to, if you execute that idea well, it could be incredible, right? It could be incredible. And so, I consider the idea, right, is the fuel that is propelling the rocket ship or the balloon or whatever analogy upwards, right? The execution is then the stuff you're putting on to guide it to success and to guide it to wonders. People, when they go to execute, can put on bad fins or rudders or wings. They can make a crappy top. They can do all this stuff to ruin a great idea. So I don't want to like absolutely, you can have a good idea gone bad in execution. And I feel like ideas are a dime a dozen. It's all about execution. Sort of covers that up. You have a great idea. You pick the wrong publisher, the wrong partner. They can ruin it, right? But so it's about adding all those elements. And so I think if you have fantastic execution, your rocket will go, like, the magnitude of the velocity upwards is the idea times the execution. And there are plenty of ideas where maybe they're not the best ideas, but the execution lifts it. What's a good example of that? And again, I don't know the process or the stuff behind this, but like, take Splendor. I don't know the beginning, but perhaps somebody said, we're going to make an engine builder with gems that's a gateway engine builder with gems. Like, I don't know, that sounds like a pretty routine idea, right? Like, I actually don't think that is an incredible wow idea, right? It's pretty generic, and I don't know anything about the process. But, and I really do believe this, at some point, and maybe it was from the designer, I'm not saying it was the publisher, but at some point, somebody made that decision to make the tokens, make the gems poker chip quality, right? I don't know if that's the thing that the designer used inherently originally, or if somebody in the execution phase, in the development process, was sort of saying like, well, this game sort of feels bland. We could have incredible art execution, but like, what would make it stand out? Oh, maybe we could make the gems poker chips. Back many years ago, when this game, for the Dice Tower awards for best component, which is like, I think, whatever miniature game won. I don't remember what happened that year. I argued very strongly that the Splendor tokens should be considered the best component, not because they're amazing magic, but like, because to me, that execution made that game spectacular, right? Like, it took it, not even if you like it or not, but like, it was the thing that drew that game from what I would think is like a lot of other games to like a mega hit, was that execution. So absolutely, on the execution side, you can nourish, grow, and like add in all these things that make an idea fantastic. So, like, it's two parts, but I think, as a point of emphasis, and maybe this is going to be a short video, but as a point of emphasis, right? Like, okay, and being somebody, I'm a little over, being somebody who's done a lot, you will, as a publisher, as a Kickstarter creator, you need to be careful. You need to be careful because you may find yourself creating a game on a mediocre idea, or on an okay idea, or on maybe even a good idea. And you're going to find out that no matter how good a job you are, no matter what creators you get there, no matter what, you're going to end up with a mediocre success. Like, it's very hard to take a mediocre idea and make a fantastic success. Possible, but not as easy as having a great idea. And I think sometimes people who are really good at executing like get into that trap of like, well, there's the idea, let's build it. There's the idea, let's build it. When sometimes it's like, that idea isn't good enough. Ideas are not a dime a dozen. That idea isn't good enough. That's a waste of our time. Don't do it. One of the interesting things I learned at Disney, which is a gigantic company with lots of money, but like, at some point there was a reluctance there to pulling the Disney lever on very good. It's like, yeah, we could do that, but I only get to like get behind 5 things a year or 10 things a year at the Disney scale. And if I'm going to get behind it, I don't want it to be just good. I need to believe it is amazing. And so I think at the Kickstarter creator, when you're playtesting players' games, you're looking at things, there's a sense of like, well, this game's pretty fun. Don't move out of that idea phase. Like, you just try not to just assume it works, right? Ideas are not a dime a dozen. They are not. They are great, fantastic, amazing ideas. Amazing ideas. And then just as when you're executing, you need to check as you go. And you certainly don't want to ruin a great idea. Try not to do that, because that happens. The other thing I wanted to talk about a little bit is, I feel like idea and execution, like, remove the marketplace. Remove, like, it's like when people talk about games as mechanic and theme, and I'm like, that's a very binary way to think about the, like, or I don't know if the word is binary, but like, that's not all the vectors of the game. I feel the same way when you say idea or execution, as if like those are the only two things that are in there. The other thing that's in there, and it may not be the only other thing, is the marketplace, is reception, is the what people want at the given time when you release. What competition is out there? Because you can have an amazing idea with fantastic execution, but it lands at the wrong time, or it is competing with the wrong product, or is somehow like an interesting example. This is in the video game space, but there's a game right now called Among Us, and it is like super popular on Steam. It's a little like a social game with a little like a werewolf style. It's super, like, if you're into board games, you're like, oh, it's like werewolf, but like many of these other games that have come out where like you're voting people off and it's got a lot of players, super indie. It's like booming right now. I mean, it is very popular and it has a huge amount of streaming and Twitch traction. But it didn't when it came out. Actually, it was just sitting around as a nothing indie game, like you might expect. And it wasn't until like whether it was COVID or just the Twitch streamer that picked it up, or the traction, like the development house had moved on to another thing, and then actually is now like coming back because of this late traction. So sometimes you have a great idea with, and even there is a mediocre execution because even the developer admits like it's like spaghetti code and they can't add new maps without like taking the game. Like it wasn't built for the level of success it has. But now they're going back to it. So like like sometimes you just aren't timed right. Other things are like like I always find it interesting. When I think of what's happening with Zoom in the marketplace today. Like I feel like if you were trying to get money and investment, and you were saying, what we're going to do? We're going to take on video conferencing. You'd be like laughed out of the room. They'd be like, you mean you're going to compete with Skype and Google and like Facebook and like every other company that gives you, video conferencing? And it's like, yeah. We've got some cool tech. We're going to do it cheaper. We're going to get it really easy to start and use and share. And we're going to do the squares. And it's like, yeah, whatever. Boom. Something happens, gains traction. And now it's like the verb to Zoom, right? Like, so, I think the market and what's happening is really important, right? And sometimes, you have things that break the market. Gloomhaven broke the market, right? Gloomhaven, and I don't know where the idea execution piece is, but somebody said, I want to do this. I want to do this thing that it is a hairy, what is it? A big, hairy, audacious goal. Like, I want to do this thing, this crazy thing, and then going through, and I'm going to there was the idea of making this massive game, 22 pounds. Then the execution, there was so much work to execute that game. So many things, so much effort to make it what it is today. To say, and you know what? No one in the marketplace wants this. No one's going to accept this, except we're going to do it because it's going to be great and everyone will just have to understand. Boom. Boom, right? So I think creators are of all different types. Some people are great at making ideas. Some people are great at executing on ideas. Some people are great at understanding what the marketplace needs and trying to get that process going, right? But I just don't think it's healthy for anybody to undercut or trivialize any step, because at every step of the way, you can have something that tanks what you're doing, something that makes what you're doing amazing. And sometimes you miss idea. Like, what's it? I bring up Heroes and Tricks a bunch. Heroes and Tricks ultimately missed, right? It's probably our most polarizing game. The idea was, wouldn't it be great if there was a game you could play while you were playing another game? Like you're playing some big, slow game and it has a lot of downtime. And rather than everyone taking out their phone, what if there was a game you could pass around the table sort of in reverse order? It used to be called counterplay, that people could play and the game came to them. They had the components. It was simple enough. ultimately, like, I believe that's a good idea. I don't know if it's a great idea, but I think it's a really good idea. And we worked hard and executed and got the box and how the car, like, a lot of things. We solved a lot of problems, but ultimately, given how it was, the randomness and the decisions made, it didn't click. It didn't nail it. And it wasn't successful as a product. Not to say people didn't work hard, not to say that I don't think it's fun in its own right, but I still think that idea is good. We just didn't nail figuring out the product and the game that lined up to it as well as it could be. So to circle back, if you have a great idea, love it, care for it, protect it. Doesn't mean you don't share it, but just don't let somebody tell you ideas are all created equal. They are just not. And anybody who's brought a mediocre or okay or good game to the market learns that you only have so many games in your lifetime, and how much are you going to spend it on okay ideas, good ideas. The more you can find great ideas, the better. And if you have it, cherish it. And then two, at the execution level, appreciate that there is great execution, which can elevate a good idea, and there is terrible execution that can just ruin and break and destroy a great idea. And there's ideas that find their greatness along the way, that don't start amazing, but then find in the execution amazing. Or maybe that it turns out the marketplace comes around to it or gets in front of it, or the marketplace shifts and then it's in there. So, and setting aside a game and an idea, somebody who understands the market can sell something that's neither of those two, right? A not great idea, not well made, but marketed great, can also be a success. And there are plenty of examples of that. So it's a spectrum. There's multiple steps. Work, love, enjoy what you do, be passionate. And I think just watch out for anything that's sort of broadly categorizing things as like X, Y, or Z. So anyway, hope it was at least entertaining. All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye. Hey, everybody. Edo here, and thanks for watching Gaming with Edo. Reviews over here on this playlist. League and Insider videos over here on this one. Subscribe, share, all that good stuff. But most importantly, play some great games. Thanks.